Wonderful to see all of you here and soon hear all of you here for those who aren't on video. Thanks for joining. I suspect that many of us are on a lot of these calls these days, and there's a lot of different sessions out there. So welcome here. We were hoping to, this series of virtual town halls that we're doing over the next few weeks, we were hoping to set up as space that would feel specific and useful for ensemble community rather than be duplicative of other things that are being offered out there. So welcome. We hope that this is time that will be useful for y'all. And I guess we'll get started with a handful of things here. Let me give you first a sense of kind of what the structure of the call will be. We are only scheduled up for an hour since we know folks' days are very full. So we're gonna try to keep things moving pretty quickly. We'll go through some sort of intro, housekeeping, logistics, some land acknowledgement, and get into the meat of the conversation. There were a handful of prompts set up for this conversation that I know Hannah will share out on screens as we get to that part. So don't worry if you don't have them up in front of you, they will be. And we've invited a few folks who we know have particular experience in some of these areas and have some things they've been doing for a while now to kind of get us started. But then we're really just hoping to make some open space for people to share ideas around what you have been doing and also things that you might want to ask each other or learn in this community, things that might be helpful to draw on the larger group for. So that's sort of what we're looking to do today. I am going to start us off with a land acknowledgement. And the first piece of that is to acknowledge that we're not all in the same space. And so land acknowledgement kind of comes in two parts for something like this. One is to recognize that we are calling from many locations. And so there's a digital land acknowledgement that I'd like to share that comes from Adrian Wong of Spider Web Show in Ontario, specifically for digital spaces. And I offer this in sort of transparent facilitation. I know many of you are hosting conversations like this as well. We'll be sharing out a bunch of resources after this call, and this is one that we can share as well if it's something that you'd like to use. And so that acknowledgement is to recognize that since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, that we'd like to take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization that is embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking that we use every day. To acknowledge that we're using equipment and high-speed internet that is not available in many Indigenous communities, and that even the technologies that are central to much of the art that we make leave significant carbon footprints that are contributing to changing climates, and that those are disproportionately affecting Indigenous peoples worldwide. And so I'm inviting you to join me in acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good use of this time, and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. The second part, I'd also like, and folks, if you want to join me in this, you're welcome to share specific acknowledgements around the land that you're calling in from in the chat, perhaps, if you'd like. For me, I am calling in, my home is on the land that's now known as Portland. Where I sit is less than 5 miles from the confluence of the Willamette and the Wamal, which is now known as the Columbia Rivers. And this land sits on land that were the traditional village sites of a number of tribes. And those include the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapoya, Malala, and many, many other tribes that were making their homes along these rivers. And in this area today, the Portland region, There are Native communities represented of over 70,000 that are descended from over 380 tribes. So I wanted to recognize those communities that are still in this region that I live in today, and extend gratitude for their stewardship of the land and respect for their elders past, present, and future. Okay. Hannah, before we go further, would you like to offer up some logistics for the meeting?
I absolutely would. Thank you, Alisha. And folks, feel free to share in the chat a land acknowledgement for the place where you're calling in. I'm in central Indiana in my childhood bedroom, which also rests on the land of the Kickapoo, Kickapoo, and Miami tribes. And I'm Hannah Finland, she, her. I'm serving as a producing and engagement consultant for NET. Which was to be working on our Ensemble Macrofest and has transitioned, as we've all transitioned, into a different sort of work. And I'm going to share just a little bit of logistical info for our call, and then we'll dive right into the juicy conversation. I want to remind us of the prompts for today, and I'm just going to share my screen with you for just a minute so that you can take a look at them. There they are. What are you doing to keep your ensembles connected during this time? Oh, you can see all my text messages too. That's cute. What strategies, mantras, or ideas can you share with other ensemble theater makers who are struggling to stay connected to one another? In what areas are you still running into roadblocks and could use the support of the larger community to help you feel more resourceful and prepared? So I offer that, and we'll go back to it. So if you need that visual, or you can take a screenshot of it now, we can come back to it for your support. I'm gonna come back to our agenda here for a second. So those are our prompts. Also, just a reminder, though I know folks are all getting to be Zoom experts at this point. There are a lot of folks on this call, so you may be looking at us as a series of Brady Bunch boxes, which is gallery view. If you'd like to switch that, so you're only seeing the active speaker, you can switch to speaker view, which is up at the top right of your screen. You can also pin a speaker. So if you'd only like to see Claudia and only Claudia, you can click on the 3 dots above Claudia's box and you'll get a variety of options. You can pick pin video. So then you just get a Claudia Alex show, which I love. So just a reminder there. If you'd like to speak, y'all should, and this might depend on the version of Zoom that you're running, but you should have a little raise hand button, which you can see if you click participants on the bottom of your screen. You have a little hand, and if you want, you can practice by clicking it so we can see people's hands go up, the participant hands go up. Y'all seeing that? Oh, I see hands. Yay, there we go. Cool. So we're going to do our best to try to use that to call in folks and queue them up for sharing today. So if you don't have that, can't find it, I'll send a reminder in the chat about where it is. And then we can verbally recognize folks to come in and speak just because there's so many of you on the call. But of course, if there's an issue with the technology there, we can always have folks come through in the chat saying, hey, I want to offer something, or we'll give you access to your mics again, and you can just come in verbally. But just to make it a little bit smoother, using that hand raise button will be really helpful. If you prefer to just write down, some of us are better written processors and want to offer our responses that way. We are recording the call, so that means that the chat is recorded. Another pro tip, if you're private messaging each other, we can see the private messages too at the end of the chat, so just be careful. I already sent one, but it was just a joyful hello. You can write down your reflection in the chat as well, and that will be saved and it can be archived alongside the conversation. And I just mentioned this, but just to reiterate, the call is being recorded. And so as you're offering things into the space during the call, just be aware that we're kind of keeping track of all this audio archive. You may have seen that we've also opened up a voicemail box for reflections. So we're trying to take in a lot of the archive and the responses, the reflections, the experience of this moment orally. And then we're figuring out what we're going to do with that. So maybe that becomes a podcast. Maybe that just becomes an archive that is organized by sort of central impulse, et cetera, so that we can come back to it later and not re-experience necessarily, but have a recording, an archive of how we were grappling, communing with one another and strategizing in this moment and healing in this moment as well. If you would not like your comments or your voice included or used, totally cool. Shoot me an email. You should all have my email now. I sent a confirmation for this call about an hour ago, hfenlon@ensembletheaters.net. And then the last piece, just before a couple quick community agreements, are that we haven't asked for permission to do like a contact list for this call, but we know that there's going to be a lot of good information shared. So do feel free to share contact information in the chat, and then we'll also follow up afterwards to try to see if we can get sort of a contact list going for these town halls. But do use the chat. You should be able to send each other private messages if you want, which we won't actually be reading them after the call, so you can totally send each other contact information if you'd like that way. So a few just very brief group agreements for this call. Just to keep it very, very simple, the first I'll offer is make space, take space. Just an acknowledgement of how much you are talking or not talking during the call. There are times when we want to be conscious of and aware of how much space we're occupying and make room for other people. And there's also times when it is your moment, and it is your moment to really speak on a lived experience that you have and expertise that you have. So balancing that with make space, take space. Stories stay, lessons leave. Just a version of the Vegas rule. What's said here stays here. What's learned here leaves here. So keeping the individual stories inside the space. Intention is greater than impact. So this is the one that sort of, for me, trumps the good intentions group agreement, which is to say that we're not going to come into any community conversation assuming that folks have malintent, but we are going to acknowledge that sometimes the impact of, in this case, words are going to be completely different than the intention of the speaker, right? And the impact is what is going to take precedence. So acknowledging if the impact of your words may be one that was felt in a negative way by someone, and being able to take accountability for that. So intention is greater. I use that little greater sign, or excuse me, impact is greater than intention. And then the last group community agreement to offer is just to breathe. We can get to talking a lot on these things and like working up our digital anxiety. I like getting more anxious looking at a computer screen. So just reminding and calling us in to breathe. And in that spirit, I'm just going to offer a 3-breath moment for folks as we launch into the conversation, which Alisha will boldly lead us into in a moment. And so if you're seated on a chair, if you're seated with maybe you're tucked underneath yourself, if you're standing, whatever, see if you can find a sense of balance, a sense of equilibrium on whatever you are atop. Hopefully some part of you is connected to the earth. Maybe it's your head, if that's the way you want to flip. But find that grounding, find that equilibrium, and we're just going to take 3 breaths. You can close your eyes if you want. You can turn your video off if you want. Those 3 breaths, we're going to offer the first breath to yourself for showing up in this conversation, for showing up in with each other, as I'm sure you've been consistently doing over the past month or so. The second breath to someone you know who is in need of a breath for healing, for support. And the third breath for someone you don't know. That third breath for someone you don't know, who may be on the other side of the world, who may be next door. Some of us don't know our neighbors well. Maybe we do better during this crisis, but someone you don't know, but you imagine could use your energy. So just 3 breaths for yourself, for someone you do know, for someone you don't know. So we'll take our first breath in together, and we'll inhale on a 5, hold on a 3, and exhale on a 5. So exhale everything out to get rid of everything first. And then a deep inhale through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 3. And exhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That breath was for you. This next breath for someone you know. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Exhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And last inhale for someone you don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 3, 2, 1. Exhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gorgeous. Thank you. And if community agreements come up that you feel we should add to the brief list I offered, please do put them in the chat. And they'll be great to have in our archive moving forward and to add to future town hall conversations. All right, Alisha, I pass to you to lead us into the protein of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you all for sticking in for all of the sort of preamble here. I know we're a ways in and it feels like a lot of preamble, but this is also our opportunity with all of you to create some of this for the upcoming town halls as well, so that we might be able to condense some of this into sort of pre-meeting material and not necessarily have to do on every call to this extent. So to that end, since we like collaboration and co-creation here at NET, part of the intention of doing this with you all is so that we have your experience of it, which means we welcome your thoughts about anything that was or wasn't included, either in the chat or by direct email, so that it can inform what those setups are for later conversations as well. So thank you for that. So let's dive in. We're going to start with the first two prompts sort of lumped together so that folks have the chance to respond either to one or the other or both. I suspect that some of these things might sort of flow into each other. And I'm going to ask, since we do have so many folks on the call, if when you are trying to share, if you can try to keep your sharing condensed and brief to just a couple of minutes so that we can hear as many voices as possible. So these first two prompts, these questions around the meat of what our question is today for each other in terms of how are we managing to stay connected to our ensemble families during this time that so many of us are spread out over different places. So these prompts of what are you doing to keep your ensembles connected during this time? And what strategies, mantras, ideas can you share with other ensemble theater makers who are struggling to stay connected to one another? So I know that there's a lot of thoughts on the call and some expertise of some folks who have been doing some of this for a while. I've invited a couple of folks onto the call to get us started, folks who I know have some practice that has been happening or have been doing some things already. So I'm going to invite each of them maybe to just start us off with just a quick minute or two sort of intro of how they respond to these questions. Post-Natyam folks, Shamala or Cynthia, are either of you here?
And I'm going to unmute everyone, so just be mindful of your own mic and background noise right now. You might want to turn it off.
This is Shyamala, I'm here.
Yay.
Great. I'd love to have you share with us for a few minutes if you can.
Sure. My name is Shyamala. I go by she and her, and I come from Long Beach in the Tongva land. We at the Post-Natyam Collective are transnational, and so we have never been in the same place at the same time. Interestingly, now we've slowed down during this time because, you know, a couple of us are really involved as professors trying to get everything online, and I have a kid at home all the time. So we've slowed down. We've really been working a lot on WhatsApp and just sharing inspirations and ideas. And like we have a little WhatsApp group message where we give each other inspirations, ideas. Sometimes one of us will respond with a little dance study and send a little video out. And we're primarily dancers. But sometimes poetry or other kinds of things are coming out of it. A lot of photos have been going on. We're into like photographing little joys around us and seeing if that can inspire a poem or a dance. But more specifically, what we've been doing in our long-term distance process over time, not necessarily right now, has been kind of a creative prompt series where one of us will give a creative prompt and we'll all answer it in our own way and put out whatever form of response it is, whether it be a poem or a photo, a video of a dance, and then we'll all respond in the comments and give feedback. It's like we have a blog going of it. And then because we'll all start focusing around a specific topic, the material starts to interlace. And we get really interested in borrowing from each other. Like if one person gave a response that the other person's really interested in, we encourage each other to start reshaping and reusing that material in our next little creative response until the material really starts to speak to each other and be really related and integrated. And sometimes that becomes separate products, and sometimes we do have in-person performances where we take all this kind of material that we've been creating long distance and then weave it together. And one other way that specifically we've worked long distance that's been really fun has been Zoom improvs. So we'll work in trios and each person has a role, because if you're familiar with trying to sync up sound on Zoom, there's a lot of delay. But so if one person is a speaker and working with text or sound or song or whatever it is they're doing, another person can be a mover, and then the last person is usually the witness, and they can watch whatever transpires and then play it back. Or there can be other formats. Sometimes one person is the mover, two people are the witnesses, and one person's moving and speaking at the same time, and then the other two play back what stood out to them, what resonates with them, what stays with them afterwards, as a way to cull interesting material and start creating together. And that was something that we used a lot in our last project. So those are just some ideas that we like to use a lot. I'm sure there's more, but I'll give some space for other people to add in as well.
Thank you, Shamala. Let's see. Let's go to maybe folks from the Syndicate, Elle or Megan, or both. Want to share with us for a minute or two?
Sure. I'll hop in first and then I'll pass over to Ellie. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan, and I'm the co-artistic director of the Syndicate, along with my colleague Ellie, who will talk in a minute. And we also have our company member Lee Hendricks on the line as well. So a couple of us. The Syndicate is a company that exists in 4 different places right now. We are in New York, Chicago, Pennsylvania, and the Netherlands. And we've been doing this for about 4 years. So this time of working together online is familiar for us. And we've also made all of the mistakes over the past 4 years that you can make when you're trying to collaborate online. So I wanted to share a couple of the things we've learned from that. One big thing we've learned is to try to set up ways to communicate that don't require everyone to be online at the same time. Or in other words, to try to do activities that can be done asynchronously. For us, using an online platform like Slack was really helpful with that, in order to cut down on the email load and cut down on texting. But we've also done projects. We worked with a playwright once who sent us letters, and we wrote letters back to her, and then she created material from letters. So I'd encourage people to think about the technologies that you already use. Phone and letter writing, older and slower technologies, can be a great way to stay connected, rather than just asking Zoom to do all the work. And the other thing I'd encourage people to think about is what access needs you and your community and your audience have. Not everyone has stable internet. Not everyone is able to communicate in English over the internet for long periods of time. Many people have kids, and so thinking about what are the technologies that are available to you that allow many different ways of participating has helped us a lot. And then I'm going to pass it to Ellie, who's in Chicago, to say a couple other things that the Syndicate has learned.
Hi, can you all hear me? Great. Hi, everybody. So I think I'd like to echo what Megan said about just making some mistakes along the way, but we've learned a lot in the last 4 years about ways to make digital space for each other. And I think just, if I only say one thing this whole time, which I probably will, it's just to allow things to take time, because we, you know, as makers are so used to rushing towards deadlines or rushing towards production. And when you're all in different places, that's just not always possible. And in the new sort of world order that we're in, it's not possible. So I think making sure that you set schedules that are flexible and allow things to take a long time and to that end, the letter writing and phone calls and things like that are just really nice reminders that it doesn't have to be instant and that you will still be able to make what you want to make.
All right, I am unmuted. Thank you both. That was really so helpful to have this sharing from folks who have been doing this stuff for a while. Thank you. Julie from Tricklock, you want to be our last picked on sharer, and then we'll open it up to anyone who wants to chime in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Hendren from Tricklock Company in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And our ensemble is based here in New Mexico. We're all together, but we do, the bulk of our work is international work. And so we've been, you know, doing the digital sort of collaboration for a little while. And we just recently experienced it with our education program, where we had a group of young people based here in Albuquerque, and then a group of young people in Kampala, Uganda, that created a show. And then we brought the group from Uganda out here and put this show together. But we had this period of several months of collaborating together. And it's really similar to what Megan and Eleanor and Shamala are saying is, I feel like it's a lot of inspiration. So we're doing a lot of, you know, we would shoot videos or do like photo collages or send each other prompts. Same idea, using WhatsApp. We also deal with a lot of digital issues. The internet in Uganda is not very, very good. And so being really conscious of the kids, and that, you know, just checking in with them if we hadn't heard in a while to see, is it a technology problem, just making sure that people don't feel out of the loop or left behind because they're actually having a problem with technology. But it really yields some great stuff to be able to have this sort of some prompts and inspiring material, and then be able to spend time on your own creating stuff, putting together a new part of the project and send it back, is a way that we've been doing things, and we'll are looking to continue to do that over the summer. And then we actually I know everybody and their mother is making a podcast right now, but we went ahead and joined that train and made one called The Global Corridor. We're actually, since we can't bring our international artists here right now, we're having these conversations with them, just calling and doing speakerphone and recording them and kind of putting it together to be able to share their you know, what they are working on, and particularly continuing to go back to the question of sort of what is our job, what is the job of the artist right now in a moment like this, and that's been a really interesting and inspiring conversation. So yeah.
And Alisha, I saw Jordan's hand and Eric's hand. I'm sure
Awesome.
You can do that too. But
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Julie. I think maybe as we move into sort of open conversation, as Hannah mentioned, if you want to raise your hand or let us know there or in chat, Hannah and I will sort of monitor there and call folks up who are next in the queue, just so there's no confusion about who's next or any of that. But I'm gonna maybe ask that you're welcome to, in sharing in these moments, respond to any of the 3 prompts, both the initial 2, what you might already be doing to keep your ensemble connected, strategies and things that you can share, ideas with other folks. But also that 3rd one, I think, no reason to sort of hold off on that if you have thoughts about that. I think we're getting a little bit of feedback, maybe. If you're not muted, please mute. Thanks. So that 3rd prompt that is about what you could use from each other. So in what areas are you still running into roadblocks and could use the support of the larger community to help you feel more resourceful and prepared? So I invite you, any or all of those 3 questions that you want to respond to as you respond, please feel free. And Hannah, do you want to, Jordan maybe first, and then we'll go to Eric. And after that, Hannah, can you help identify a sort of order that folks have raised in? Great, thanks. Jordan?
Hi, yeah, I'm Jordan Rosine, pronouns he, him, calling from Blacksburg, Virginia. I am a regular collaborator with Rengyoso, which is a Buto company in New York run by Yoko. And she and I have worked together also with the Ume group for about 10 years. And we've been having very fruitful, productive collaboration over Instagram the last 4 or 5 weeks, leading free Buto dance classes, which have been an interesting way to recenter pedagogy and technique and the investigation of our values as a pair of creative collaborators. And likewise, looking at old work repertory that we've created and focusing on teaching or redissecting that. And I offer that in sort of answer to the 2 first questions, what technology we're using and what also strategies we're making use of. Instagram is pretty interesting because of the live broadcast feature, which can hang around on your feed for 24 hours, but it also has limitations in that regard because you can't necessarily download it to a place without an external app. But we've been able to engage with new communities globally through use of that very hot platform at the moment. That's all I've got to say.
Jordan, and there's a question in the chat for you, and I may have missed this too if you said it, but a question from Marcella that says, are you teaching via Instagram Live?
Yes, Instagram Live. We do a weekly class on Mondays at 3 o'clock Eastern time and use the story features and regular posts to sort of promote those.
Great. Eric, you want to share? I love that. First, I wanted to hear the instrument that you were playing earlier when you were muted, and now I desperately want the hug from that dog that you're getting. Yeah.
Here it is.
There we go. That's the best sharing ever.
That's Bubbles. My name's Eric Coopers. I'm in Oakland, California with Bandelion and Dandelion Dance Theater, and also with Cal State East Bay. And I have a lot of ensembles and sub-ensembles, and pretty much all of them are geared around wanting to practice together on a weekly basis all year long. And when performances come out of that, that's great, but they're really sort of practice and training communities. So I'm feeling a strong grieving of that contact, that regular contact. We've been continuing to meet as best we can through Zoom, and the improvising together a lot is sort of like a next best thing. And we're experimenting with that and doing a little bit of creative composition work, but mostly improvising together and checking in. Just having the regular check-ins feels important. The thing that's been hardest for me, and I'm curious if anybody has resources around this, is around how to make music together online in real time. And because of the limitations of Zoom with only one person being heard at once, We've been experimenting with this app called Jam Kazam, which some of you may have tried, which seems like it could work great if we could all get it working. And we're slowly getting it working, but I'm curious to hear if anybody's found other ways to either sing together, play music, things like that. Thank you.
And if you have them, maybe put them in the chat for now. And again, Alisha and I will do our best to sort of archive everything, the questions and responses for our report back email.
Yeah, great. Yes, I will add something there as well. I have one thought for you, Eric, that I've heard from some other folks. So others, please share as well. It looks like Denise is next. Hi, Denise.
Hi. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. I just wanted to share briefly about two groups here in Tucson, Arizona. I'm back and forth between Tucson and Los Angeles, of course, right now, just in Tucson. There's a group called Dunbar Cultural Center or Dunbar Pavilion, which is a cross-sector group of, it's historically an African-American space, formerly a segregated school, and is now run by Debbie Chess-Maber, and they include many school projects, a barber shop, African-American based groups, dance groups, and also Corey Press. So Corey Press is not specifically African-American, but it is feminist and has a very multicultural or culturally diverse group of people that write for it. And one of the things they've been doing recently under the direction of Lisa Bowden is to do weekly writing / story time. And it's basically, so if you have a kid, you can have them listen to a fantastic live streamed writer or storyteller, people from libraries, some fantastic Tohono O'odham storyteller, musicians. And then while that is going on, you get at least 30 minutes to an hour to write. So they say, get your journal out. This is for Shamala, who has a kid right now with her. And do the writing so that at least you could have that little bit of time while you're listening to some fantastic community member work. So I think it's just been a way, because I know Lisa is also a mom, and her wife struggle with just being able to do their work at the same time they're with their kid. And so I think for a lot of people, it's just like, yes, we need something right now. And it's good because it's very much community based. So they basically use the resources that they have to keep people connected in these times. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Denise. Okay, I have that Joan is next. Where are you at, Joan?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Joan Shirley, she, her, from Del Arte International. I would say that at the moment we're focused a lot on survival, in that we just had to cancel / sorry, that's my landline going off. I'll come back to me because I need to shut that up and mute myself.
Then we can move to Rob, Alisha. Rob,
yeah, great. And just for those of you who have been raising your hand, just so you know where you are, I have Rob, and then we'll circle back to Joan if we're ready to, and then Cleo, and then Alex. Okay, Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Neal, New York neo-futurist, he, him, currently in New York, land of the Lenape people. We pivoted pretty quickly on the 13th of March from having shows and auditions for new company members for the ensemble to having some kind of survival creative outlet, and have been creating, we're in week 5 of creating a podcast, Hit Play, which we do 2 new episodes each weekend, and then create a short film for a Patreon that we created to try to get some kind of donations coming in. A lot of what we've been doing besides that here in New York is trying to not only find ways that we can continue to pay our artists, but also through reliefs, grants and loans, but also to have somewhat regular meetings for people in our ensemble to provide them with support, seeing as a lot of them were freelance artists and had 100% of their income go away in 3 or 4 days. Part of what we are looking at and have questions about is more of the how can we create live events. We're trying our first one on Instagram Live, like Jordan, on Wednesday. It's a very short secret presentation. We're letting people submit secrets via Google form, and then we will be putting them into a secret palace live anonymously. And we're going to see how that goes, because we would like to have more live events. As for 15, 16 years, we've been doing weekly shows, and we have a lot of people in our ensemble that still want to create, and some people that find that to be somewhat supportive for them to create and for people to actually experience it. So that's what we've been up to, just continuing to create and have regular meetings with people via Skype. And also I have found, oddly or nicely, that I am actually having regular phone calls with people on a much more frequent basis, and not always relying on looking at a screen, which I feel a little burned out by. No offense, but it's good to see y'all.
Agreed. The screen time can be a bit overwhelming. It's one of the adjustments that I suspect many of you are having. I know definitely at NET, as an organization that has always worked remotely with staff and boards spread out across the country, and has always sort of been in this remote from home world. Like many of you, it has been a huge shift to sort of have everyone else sort of join us in this space and way of working all of a sudden, and to find all of life sort of taken over by these sort of calls. So I am with you in that for sure. Joan, are we ready to come back to you?
We are.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so as I said, we've been focusing on survival, trying to get in our small business loan, which we did get in, and we got a loan. We're trying to keep everybody in our ensemble employed, which has to do with our school, obviously. So everybody's had to take to online teaching, which is gah. And we had to cancel / postpone our summer festival. That's going to be a huge loss, and that's part of what we asked for in the loan. I will say that one thing we are doing, which has been helpful, is that the ensemble member who is our titled our managing director sends out pretty much a daily state of us email to people, and somebody else sends out emails that are about resources and performances online, because we're almost in overwhelm of the number of emails we're getting about great things to see, great things to learn, webinars to be better at. This is one of them that we're all sitting in right now. But there's so much of that. We've tried to ask one person to be the clearing for that stuff, so I'm not getting 5 different members of my ensemble writing me about the same thing. One thing that has been working well online is trying to continue EDI conversations, and one of our ensemble members started one with our alumni, and 40 people joined in, which is great, because this is something we've only been having in-house among ourselves, these conversations. And it was great both for them to know what we were doing and for us to get their feedback. The only other thing I will say is that roadblocks right now are not knowing how to reschedule everything that is on hold, and wondering if okay, and suddenly in September, every venue, everyone is going to suddenly be producing again, and how do we navigate through all that? And we don't know. So if anyone's been thinking about that besides us, probably you have. And in terms of producing, our students are doing some amazing work using Zoom, where a 2-person exercise will take place over 2 screens, and they're figuring out how to do that. It may be the destruction of physical theater, I don't know, but at least it's interesting to watch them do that.
Great, thank you, Joan. And that last bit you touched on, the town hall that we have coming up in 2 weeks is going to explore some of that, just sort of this larger question around theater and liveness and what that all means going forward. So I encourage folks to take a look at the info there and join us again in 2 weeks for that. We'll tell you more at the end about that and also the one coming up next week. I think Cleo, you're next up on deck.
Hi, I'm Cleo, and I just wanted to touch back a little bit to what Jordan Rosine was saying, using kind of those hot social media platforms to teach. I've been teaching both modern and hip hop dance classes over Facebook Live, and just to share a little bit of the problem with that is that when you do that, not only is it live for the entire world if you have a public profile, but also all of your old friends want to comment and say, hi, I haven't talked to you in 9 years. I had to troubleshoot that a little bit. I found, if anybody is interested in doing that, that the best way to go about it is to create a Facebook event. Then the people that are interested in the class can subscribe to the event, and you can go live directly within the event. That way you kind of cut out all of that extra traffic that we aren't really interested in. And then just to share another kind of way of creating that is digital, I created an ensemble-based dance theater piece called Imprints that has been performed a few different places in California. And that was created with one dancer in the Bay Area, one dancer in El Dorado County, and then I was at Del Arte in Humboldt. So to do so, we did a lot of writing back and forth and then used Marco Polo to actually send each other dance pieces. So it was like, here's a little snippet of choreography, and then someone would respond with a little snippet of choreography. And sometimes that would be to build one piece, and sometimes that would be a big piece that then we share with someone else that they can build their own piece off of. So just two different things there to share and think about also. And actually I have to go because I have to teach an online class coming up really soon. So thank you all. It was so good to talk to you all, and hopefully I'll be in the next town hall.
Great, thank you, Cleo.
Of course.
Okay, I have 2 people left here in the queue, and I know we're getting close to the end of our hour, but if you wanted to also, I see one more in here, Siobhan. So let's go next to Alex. Where are you at?
Me, Alex?
You, Alex, you got it. I've been wondering about you in this conversation, actually, because I know you all have been doing this sort of cross-city thing for a while as well.
Yeah. Thank you. So I know we're running out of time, so I'll just keep it really brief. We have been working in multiple cities and multiple countries for a while. Zoom has been our friend, but I've never hated Zoom before until now. Now I hate it. It's so interesting. It used to be this like thing I really was so excited to get on every day, and now I'm like, never again. But I will share, I just, unfortunately, what I want to share is not about live performances. It's about how we're working on continuing the development of our work right now. So one, we were in the midst of rehearsals, development rehearsals for a project that was going to open in July. And without being, and our work is hyper-physical. If you don't know our work, we get into each other's nooks and crannies. And so we had to figure out a way to continue that process without being there physically. And so we kind of had to go against what we believe in and actually start splitting up the work. So we were in a place where we had already 22 basic pieces that we'd been working on for 2 years, 22 moments, I'll call them. And so what we're actually doing for the last 4 weeks, and we'll continue for another 3 weeks, is I've been assigning the piece to and pairing people differently between themselves, and they'll work on it off Zoom. So on the phone, through Slack, whatever mechanism that they want. And the major prompt they're being asked is, what is a new theatrical device we can view this piece through? So, and it's really about outlining what are all the different elements that we already have in the piece. What's the text? What would you change if you want to? How would you break it apart? The music we're using, give us other options. Just really looking at everything through an entirely new lens, but having these pairs really take an artistic leadership perspective on that, and then they'll present it. And the place we're at right now is, now that we're getting those proposals back on the pieces, is how are we going to actually workshop? And so we're setting aside 4 hours on Saturday mornings to engage in the physical workshopping of this, which means whoever is living in their home with them, we're asking them to play with them physically. So like it's great. We work with non-artists all the time. So it's gonna, we haven't, the first one is coming up. So we'll report out on how that goes. But I don't know if you want to really, how's that process been for you as an artist?
I'm glad you're my partner as part of the development. But it's been really good, especially like working with a choreographer throughout this process and guiding us through the different possibilities of developing the work. And I think it's been really lovely to see how we think beyond the limitations of what we have there and just expanding the imagination and using different things as reference points and then building on. And if it's possible in the rehearsal room, we're not limiting ourselves or editing ourselves, which has been a really nice gift in living within that imagination of like creating right now.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks.
Oh, thank you both. Siobhan. Hi.
Hi everyone. I guess just the thing I wanted to offer up is I'm a solo artist actually, and I've been working with a team more now that I'm doing remote shows. And I'm also an immersive artist, so the things that I do are interactive. And so just the thing that I learned right away was that I have essentially a joker or a room producer or facilitator or however you want to call it, where so when we need participation from folks, I have someone who's managing that for me. And so we use up twinkles and down twinkles like Occupy. So when folks are engaging with the prompt, then they visually show that. And my room producer kind of, thank you. My room producer kind of is able to sort of select people for me, so that that's one less thing I have to do while I'm performing. And that's been a great way to kind of manage all the highly interactive work we're doing and still be able to have people feel really included without it getting kind of too chaotic. And then we also have a third teammate who's able to kind of observe and be like, okay, this is how it went. Here's the notes for making the next one work better this way. And so, so that's one of my experiences in the past month that I wanted to share.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I think I'm gonna go, I don't see any other hands raised in the queue, so I'm going to go to the last one I have on my list, which is Claudia, who, for those of you who may not know, is the co-president of the NET board currently. Appropriate to have our last word here, and holder of many, many resources in these kinds of spaces. So what you got for us, Claudia?
Indeed. Well, first, just shout out to everyone's growing practices. You're inventing the new movement right now. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm a big fan of Discord as a platform. I attend a bunch of poetry slams and do jams on Discord because you can share via voice and do messages. I'm also a big fan of Twitch. I do a lot of stuff on Twitch. When it comes to Twitch, it gives me a chance to have interactivity with the audience as well as live streaming capabilities. I've been holding weekly digital and transmedia producing in an age of pandemic, sort of like peer exchange ideation sessions every Monday morning, 10 to 11:30. We just take 90 minutes and do stuff and learn things. That's been fun. I'm also part of a couple of different cohorts who spend about an hour a week playing on these platforms, figuring out what is actually possible. How do we do this? I'm part of a drumming circle. Have you ever tried to do drumming over Zoom? It's a nightmare, but we're figuring it out, and it's gorgeous and it's beautiful. I'm also part of a cohort called Unsettling Dramaturgy, another group of human beings who have been meeting across time and space using digital technologies. And as part of our own practice, we came up with what we felt were the most accessible practices and also the most decolonized practices. So we've been doing some praxis sessions that we've been sharing via HowlRound. I have also been consulting with a group called NASH, Northwest Arts Streaming Hub. They are currently creating their own streaming platform to share work. So there's just a lot of really exciting stuff happening every single week. Come join me on Monday if you want to, because we're sharing our discoveries there. And also, I put into the chat the Transmedia Performance Facebook group where we're also sharing a lot of these resources. Thank you to the Network of Ensemble Theaters for pulling us all together for this, and also for the future town halls. This is really amazing, and it's so good to see your faces.
Great, thank you, Claudia. We're gonna move into wrap up. I see some folks asking in the chat about how folks can join the Monday. We'll put the resources, Claudia, if you want to help us, put resources that you shared into the chat, and will become part of the log that we share out from this to all of you. So just for some wrapping up, this is fantastic. This is, as some of you know, however many, I guess it was last month at this point when we were in Albuquerque on the ground for what we thought was going to be one of the first of a year-long series of in-person events around the country as part of this Ensemble Macrofest series. We did a first sort of rapidly pulled together town hall like this, just to see where everyone was and what was on people's minds and the kind of things like this that you might all want to talk about later. So this is sort of the first manifestation of that, but it's the first one that we've done in this kind of way. So thank you for being with us today for this. As I said sort of earlier in the call, if there are thoughts you have about sort of structure, form, content, any of those things, please share them out. It will only help future ones get more useful for everyone. And we do sort of try to do everything in that sort of co-created way. So we really, really welcome as many of your thoughts as you want to share. Some quick sort of wrap up pieces as we close out here, some reminders of things. As I mentioned, we'll be sharing out resources that were referred to or dropped in the chat. I also, in sharing those out, it has been occurring to me that NET has this wonderful resource called the Shareback Library that exists on our website that is the cumulative peer-created blog posts, videos, sort of all sorts of things that have come out of people's experiences with Net 10 travel and exchange grants over the last 7 or 8 years, but they are tagged by topic. And it occurs to me that there are ones in that library that are particularly useful around some of the topics that we're talking about in these sessions. So I'll be trying to collate some of those together and add them into the resources, as well as some other things. But if there's something that you know of that you didn't mention in the chat already, definitely send it along to me or Hannah to include in what we put together for you all. And if you haven't found your way there yet, there is a constantly being added to page on the resource tab of NET's website that is a list of resources that have been coming out from these times. I know a lot of folks have these lists out there, so our list actually includes a list of many of those aggregated resources as well, so that we're not reinventing the wheel, but just sending you to all of the wonderful people who are already putting these things together that might be relevant to you. Thank you, Hannah, for dropping that in the box. Other reminders, Hannah mentioned about the voicemail box that is set up for you to share reflections. Definitely encourage you to go there and share things, even if you were on this call, or if there are other members of your ensemble or other colleagues that you feel like might have something to share there, definitely pass that along to them. You don't have to have participated in these calls to send things there. You don't have to be a NET member. Also, I've mentioned in the chat an events calendar that's also on that resource page on NET's website. That is intended to be a community calendar of online events that are being offered by or would be of interest to NET and ensemble makers. So if you're doing something that's public, if you know of someone that is, there's a submission form there, so you can send us that info and we can get it up on that calendar for you all to see. There's a lot of great stuff going on there, and it's definitely helping me sort of organize for myself personally all of these wonderful offerings that are happening, being able to keep track of them all somewhere. So hopefully that can be a resource for you all as well. And then the last two reminders, if you're not on the Facebook group for NET, I encourage you to be there. It has something like 3,700 members around the world at this point, so there's a lot of information and posts out there. That's also a place you can share things that you want to get out to folks about, or just keep up with what else is being posted there. And then a shout out that this is the first, as we mentioned, of at least 3, maybe more, we'll see as we go, of these virtual town hall settings. So the next one is coming up, they'll all be at this time on Mondays, and the next one is coming up next Monday and is around loneliness and artistry, and how we can use artistry to help address isolation, and it is being wonderfully co-facilitated by Todd London, current Net Board member, and Corinna Schulenburg, past Net Board president. So please join us there if you're interested. And then there'll be one the week after that as well. You can find out more about all of those on our website too. Hannah, what did I miss?
Just an acknowledgement that we know that the Google Calendar might be being a little bit wonky, and we will get back on the revisiting of making that work and making the information public to everyone. So thanks for giving us that heads up.
Cool, great, thank you. And just personal shout out to Hannah. Thank you very much for the organizational help and support and vision brain on all of these. You're amazing. All right, all. Thank you for being here. Sorry, we're a few minutes over. I so appreciate getting to see all of your lovely faces and to know that we are all, in fact, here together and in this together in this tricky time. So thanks so much, and be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peace out.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Peace.
Peace out.